Welcome to Sister Citizen Talks. This series is a production of the Anna Julia Cooper Center with generous support from the Miss Foundation for Women and several units of Wake Forest University. Your host for this series is Melissa Harris Perry. She is the founder and president of the Anna Julia Cooper Center at Wake Forest University. She's also the Maya Angelou Presidential Chair of Politics and International Affairs.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Melissa Harris Perry. And as you heard from our guy, Zach there, I am the founder and president of the Anna Julia Cooper Center. And we are an independent organization that has had a home at Wake Forest at various times. But right now, we're an independent organization, and our work is focused on advancing justice through intersectional scholarship and action. And we're really thrilled that you've joined us here in this virtual space for our conversation tonight. This is the fourth event, the penultimate event in our Sister Citizens Conversations with Black Women in U.S. Politics and Media series. If you have missed any of the earlier talks, we encourage you to go over to the Anna Julia Cooper Center website at ajccenter.com, or you can follow us on social media. We are at AJC Center across social media platforms, and you'll find there some of our earlier conversations. We've had some great ones 2 weeks ago with District Attorney of Durham, North Carolina, Satana DeBerry, who actually just days after our conversation with her, then decided that she is going to run for Attorney General here in the state of North Carolina.
If I want things to be different, they are different tomorrow. Right? And if I don't want things to be different, they will never, ever, ever be different.
Listen, so who knows what tonight's guest may tell us a week later. I mean, it's getting good around here, folks. So we encourage you, while you are part of our conversation tonight, feel free to please use the hashtag Sister Citizen Talks. And you can put questions for me or for our guest, or just questions that you have about life into our Facebook page chat. And again, be sure to go back and catch some of our earlier conversations. But right now, I am thrilled to introduce our guest for tonight. And I got to tell you, we are in the last couple of weeks of this semester. I've been teaching this class on Black women in U.S. politics and media, and I have been looking forward to this particular conversation all semester. Our guest tonight is Ayesha Rascoe. Ayesha Rascoe is the host of Weekend Edition Sunday and Saturday episodes of Up First on NPR. Ayesha joined NPR in 2018. She served as a White House correspondent. She covered 3 presidential administrations. And before joining NPR, she was like Black Girl Does Green Politics, writing on environmental questions and energy questions for Reuters. And I just got to say, this happened in our very first talk, and now it's back again. Ayesha Rascoe is a graduate of HU Howard University. Ayesha, welcome to the Sister Citizen Talks and virtually to Wake Forest University.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad to be here tonight. If I'm looking down at my phone, it's just because I got to get my mama Uber. You know, I can't leave my mama stranded at the airport, and so I'm doing all the things, mothering, got a mama, just trying to do everything.
Listen. Please do not leave your mother at the airport, and we'll come around to being in that sandwich of mothering and doing and working with mom at some point in our conversation, because part of or the other course I'm teaching this semester is the politics of motherhood. So I always try to throw in one question for those students as well. But I do want to start with, I'm glad you started with your mom, because you are from North Carolina, as was our last guest. And I have to say that, like, as we were signing off with the district attorney, and I was saying, all right, our next guest is Ayesha Rascoe. She was like, oh, you know, Ayesha's from Durham, right? And like, really, like, it was important to her to claim you, to lay claim to you. And Durham's up the road, but we here at Wake Forest are in Winston-Salem. And I know your mama is an alum of
Winston-Salem State University. She's a very proud Ram, part of the Ramily, as she likes to say.
So talk to me about North Carolina. Do you still think of it as home base?
Well, it's like I have an interesting relationship with North Carolina, because I grew up there. I was actually born in New Jersey, but moved to North Carolina when I was 3. So this is my whole life.
Yeah.
But I also spent a lot of time wanting to get away because, it was just like I didn't feel like I had come into my own in North Carolina. I wanted to go out to the big city and I wanted to be able to develop my own idea of who I was. And I felt like I couldn't really do that in Durham, North Carolina. I felt like I had to, I felt like I was always very shy and introverted. And I just needed the opportunity to get to a new place and I could, be whoever I wanted to be, kind of. So I still love Durham. I still have like so much of my family is in the area in North Carolina. I love the hot dogs at the doghouse. Like I love to get back when I can. But so it's like it's an interesting,
Mhm.
it's an interesting feeling because like high school and all that stuff was kind of tough for me.
Yeah, I was, I went to Wake Forest as an undergraduate and then came back 20 years later as a faculty member. And I've been here 10 years now. So 35 years, I've had some connection or another to Wake Forest. And I was talking with someone who was like, oh, you must really love it. And I was like, huh, I don't know. I was like, I'm not sure that I would say that. It's more that it's definitive, right? You can't understand me without understanding this place and how it shaped me. And so I guess part of what I'm looking for is when you think about even what's challenging about the North Carolina story, in what ways do you see it as shaping you? So part of it is pushing you to the big city, pushing you to DC.
Yeah.
But are there other ways where you feel like you're carrying it with you?
I mean, I think I do carry a lot of it with me because I think I have this very country. And I say country, it's not even just Southern, it's country. This sensibility of not wanting to be too puffed up. I grew up, not only am I a black woman from the South, I grew up in a very religious household, Church of God in Christ. So we would drive every Sunday to an even, from Durham to a very small town of Oxford, North Carolina. And so it was always like a very, it was something where I had to learn how to carry myself, right? And there were a lot of things in it because you're trying to be, you want to be welcoming to people, but then there's also some things about the way women have to be down south or in my church, and not speak up too much, not be too loud, not be too abrasive. But there can be a kindness, but we also know there can be a nastiness. I will say that for my family and for like the women in my family, that like my big mom was a saint. Like she was really kind. Like even in, she was very religious and strict, but she was always very kind. She was always so nice. And I feel like I have tried to carry that with me, whether it's through my mother or through, what I learned about how to be a person who is welcoming, who tries to treat people right, who doesn't think who's not too like stuck up, right? Like just who's down to earth. I think that's what was ingrained in me.
Was that your mama calling?
I think did my mama call? Let's see. No, I think that's the Uber try. I'm trying to she'll get there. I think she'll get there. One way or the other, child.
You're not leaving your mama out. So listen, I so appreciate that because I mean that does feel like not just Southern, but kind of North Carolina, right? That we are, and I appreciate the language of country because I am also extraordinarily country, like not just, my husband's Southern, but he's from New Orleans. And so he's like city mouse Southern.
That's different. Yeah.
Right. But I'm like in the backyard with chickens this morning, cleaning the coop. Like that is what I did this morning before getting ready for this. Right. And so, and that is a country mouse version of Southern that he is not so excited about. But that language of like trying to be welcoming or not too puffed up, of sort of making room at the table for folks, and yet trying to be a journalist. So as a journalist, you got to ask hard questions. But sometimes you've like, it's kind of rude, right? To invite someone to your table and then ask them things that are uncomfortable, challenging. How have you thought about balancing that question of like being welcoming, opening, growing the table, but also growing the table in ways that connect with your journalistic ethics?
Yeah, I mean, it can be tough. I think that it didn't. I think in some ways, I'm a mix. Like I'm a Gemini, I guess. So I got a little bit of both. So I feel like I'm very nice, and I try to be kind, not just nice. But I also am someone who's always like had. I've been a bit of a cynic, and it's like if you're telling me this, it's like really.
Mhm.
That's like anytime anyone's trying to tell me a line, I'm like, where's the evidence? This is the way I've always been. Like since I was a kid, like I don't believe it, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so I think that I've always had that in me. I think
Mhm.
it's about learning how to lean into that. And I've always been the sort of person who's like, I'm going to ask these questions. And, I believe in respecting people, but I don't believe that respect requires me to dumb myself down, or if you say something that doesn't make sense, that I have to pretend that it makes sense because it doesn't make sense. And so I think that that's the way that I've tried to thread that needle. It's like, yeah, I'll be respectful, but if you say something that I'm like, that just doesn't, what are you talking about? What are you saying? Where's your evidence? I think that's the way I approach it. But it is difficult because I think there is a part of me that has never been the person that wanted to be like, because you can, as a journalist, there are all sorts of ways to be a journalist, and you can be a real pit bull, and you can be like, I'm going to call you every day, and how don't you screw me on this story, and like that has never been me. I think that works for some people, and also as a Black woman, I don't know, does that really work for a Black woman? I don't really know. I haven't seen it that way, so we can get into the dynamics of that.
Yep.
But there are certain people who are allowed to be more like that than others. But I think that hasn't been me. And so there have been times when I've thought, like, does that mean I'm not a good journalist? Because I'm not like, you're going to give me this story, or I'm going to get you. That's not who I am. That's not the way I operate.
All right, I have a student question that is right on this topic. So let's take a look and hear from Remy.
Hi, my name is Remy. I'm a sophomore at Wake Forest University. My question is, you've shared many stories about your involvement with the student newspaper, The Hilltop of Howard University, and I was wondering if you had any advice for students who found themselves sharing struggles of navigating journalistic integrity while also recognizing the status and position that comes with being a student.
That's a great question. And I can also say my mom is on the way in the Uber, so I can stop looking at my phone. Yeah. But no, so the Hilltop has been, or the Hilltop was a defining moment in my life. So the student newspaper at Howard, founded by Zora Neale Hurston. I have to throw that in there. When I did it, it was daily for the last 2 years of my college career. And so I think that being a student journalist is it's a place where you can learn so much valuable knowledge. But it's also a place where you can make so many mistakes because you're an adult. You're very young, and you don't have the experience. You just don't know. And want you to do what they want you to do, and you have to learn how to stand up to them. And so I think in that way, and then you have to. And so it's. Oh, I'm sorry. One second. My child is knocking at the door. What is? I'm on the thing. What do you want? Sorry. Annalise, what is it, baby? Come here. What's wrong? Come here. You okay? She was sick earlier today. I'm saying,
No, take your time. It's fine.
you okay? Do you need some juice? You need some juice? Okay, I'm
Hey,
doing
baby.
you right now.
Y'all stay. Y'all stay and talk to us.
Doing an interview right now, okay? You're hungry? Okay, so I think we'll get you some chips, okay? Okay, go. Can you get her some chips? Okay. Many hats that I wear. A lot of things I'm doing.
I love everything that just happened.
So, a lot of things going on. So this is my life, but yes.
Yeah, so maybe we actually, I just want to just pause it for a second. So, you don't have to tell us any more about your children in public than you want to, but tell us, if you can, sort of. So, how old are your kids? What grades are they in? Whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah, my kids. I talk about them. I have 3 kids. I have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And that was the 7-year-old and the 6-year-old who just came in. They are in 4th grade, 2nd grade, and kindergarten.
You're like, what are my children doing? Right? Yeah.
And they keep me very busy.
Yes.
At all times. So yes, and they are, my life. And so so that's what I'm juggling and balancing at all times is my 3 children, the loves of my life. Yeah.
During the pandemic, were you recording at your home or were you going into studio still?
I was at home. So that happened all the time. When I was doing interviews, live. I always say my kids were on every talk show, they were on the BBC radio, they were on everything. Anything you could imagine, they have appeared on in the background, yelling or screaming, or didn't matter who I was talking to, they were around. So they made themselves known.
There's something about that too. When I think about where you started with Kojic and Southern Kojic identity and Black girls. And there's a version of Southern Black girls who you bet not, if your mother is speaking, right? I'm not talking about she's on a show, like your mother is just speaking to another adult, then it would not occur to you to like engage or enter. But I too have raised a free Black girl. Yes. And my goodness, is she free? Like I dropped her off the other day and we were late. And I was like, all right, Anna, I need you to hustle. I need you to hustle up. Go ahead and hustle. And then I took a video as she walked more slowly than I have ever seen any person walk. And I was like, clearly Anna gives not one good night about whether or not she is late or she's like, well, you dropped me off late. That does not constitute an emergency on my part. I'm going to walk in here. So talk to me a little bit. This wasn't on the menu of or itinerary, but like, what does it mean to try to raise free Black girls in this space that we're living in?
I think free Black girls, and I have my son, a free Black boy. I think that what I have tried to impart on my children, and I don't know that I always get it right, and that it is okay in ways that even I certainly didn't do with my mother, that they can tell me how they feel. So my children, they would tell me if I hurt their feelings, and they're quick to tell me, and I will say, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know that hurt your feelings. I can try not to do that. Because one time I was saying, y'all are spoiled. You're just spoiled. And they said, Mommy, that hurts my feelings when you say that. And I said, well, fine. I won't say that anymore.
Especially since that's your fault.
Oh, wait, it's all my fault.
Right.
But yeah, so they will tell me if they feel, if they feel like I hurt their feelings or I said something to them. Because I do want them to be able to say, look, I want them to feel like if someone is treating them in a way that they don't like, that they can say that. And I want them to have the expectation that people who love you and care about you will adjust their behavior and they care about how you feel. So I do allow them to do a lot more than my mother wasn't super strict, but there was no talking back. There was no, well, that really hurts my feelings, mommy, when you say that. She won't try to hear that.
Yeah.
She wasn't that loose with it. It was like, you be quiet and you do what I said.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't like it. But I do try to give them a little more leeway to explain their feelings. And I think that's a part of just being able to have a voice and to be able to say, like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is the way I want to be treated in life. And I find that it works because it's not necessarily, they don't like do it when it's like they can't get candy. Like they will do it at times where it's like, you said something to me and that hurt my feelings, or your tone with me was like, that hurt my feelings. And it's like, well, I can work on that.
That's fair. Yeah. And it's better. I'm older than you, so my dad is also, 80-year-old Black man from the South. And I mean, all of my life I heard, nobody cares how you feel except your mother, and you might be overestimating how much she cares. And so I will say there's also some value in that, because it helps you from when in fact the world does not care how you feel. It's helpful to know that it does not.
Yeah.
All right. Since we're talking about Black girls, I want to play for you this like 39-second clip that is one of my favorite moments. It's actually you on TV as opposed to you on radio, but you're in conversation with a Black girl about a Black girl. So let's take a look at that.
What are you hearing from civil rights leaders, but also from the White House, from Black women, about what this moment means to them?
Oh, well, the historic nature of it is not lost on them. And I think that's why it was so important, especially now when Biden has had a lot of issues, as we know and as has often been talked about, with people feeling like he has not lived up to all of his promises, especially particularly to the Black community when it comes to voting rights, when it comes to policing and other things of that nature. This gives President Biden a chance to actually deliver.
So there's a lot of history going on in that moment. What do you see and hear when you look at it?
Well, I see my girl Yamiche, who I, just adore and love being on air with Yamiche whenever I could, and we would just try to cut up whenever we could get together. And she would just be kind of like, I'm waiting to see what you gonna say. And I see that sisterhood because we were in the Trump White House together, and there were times where we would have to look at each other. There were times where he was saying crazy things to her. I had to, rub her back on the way out and say, girl, or things would be happening, and I would get the text, did you see? So we had to kind of, talk with each other about what we were going through. And we're also talking about, all of these historic moments, like, with Biden. I think at that point he might have been talking about the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's the KBJ nomination. Yeah.
So being able to talk about those issues with another amazing Black woman reporter who is serious and has an amazing at what she does, right? And being able to have those moments, it's just incredible to me.
Yeah, that moment makes me smile because it reminds me of the moments that I would have with Joy Reid during the second term of Obama. And of course, those aren't moments I have anymore. She has them still some, and I enjoy being, getting to watch and see them. But there is something about sharing these very particular historic moments in American politics about Black folks with like your sister friends in the work of political media.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's what I will say that I have, I think some people will say that they have had, coming up in media or other other industries, that sometimes they have not always felt the support of like other Black women. Sometimes you hear that, or older Black women or what have you. I will say that has not been my experience. I have been blessed to have so many Black women along the way pour into me. Michelle Martin, Audie Cornish, Yamiche is my homegirl. I've had so many. Eva McKinn, that's my bestie. I'm in her wedding. So I have had so many people really pour into me. and feel like they're rooting for me every step of the way, and not like any weirdness or anything like that, but just real support and like really reaching out, like, how you doing? Are you doing okay? Like, and I think that's, people may not recognize or realize that, but it's been really beautiful. That's and I appreciate it so much.
I think it's so important to me, like, because those things that, to me, it was the Colorado Giants, it's the, Tammy Hall, like, these people are real human beings who made all the difference. I want to, because I do think that rootedness that you're talking about right there, that athlete for sisterhood and for a reflection on community when others are expecting Real Housewives of Atlanta, that you're, actually experiencing and doing something else. I do think it's rooted in a version and a sort of experiencing of Blackness. So I just want to look at this little video that you did with NPR. Just for a minute.
Wherever I go and whatever I do, I am a Black woman. There are certain things I say where people will know that I'm Black. Some people will say, oh, you've kind of turned up your Blackness. But it's not like I'm turning it up or turning it down. I'm just talking more casually. Whatever I do, I'm myself, because that's the only person I know how to be. But sometimes you may feel it a little more depending on what I'm talking about.
So can we talk about that voice of yours and how people are feeling it?
Yes, absolutely. It's been a topic of conversation.
It is a topic of conversation. Look, when I said to the students early on in the semester who all we were talking with, and I was like, and we're talking to my favorite voice on NPR, and you just are. And sure enough, as soon as I tweeted about this earlier in the week, I was like, oh, so excited to have an Ayesha. And the first comment was like, oh, I can't with her voice. And I was like, what is happening right now? So I know you've told this story a million times, but it trips me out that you're like, oh, I didn't know that my voice sounded different from other people's voices.
Oh, I didn't at all. I didn't come up through broadcast, so I didn't have, any focus on it. I was always doing print.
Mm-hmm.
And so no one ever mentioned to me in my print journey that, oh, you say words, you're very Southern. I mean, I covered the oil industry for many years, the oil industry. And no, and I would talk to, the energy secretary, and I would ask about the oil markets, and nobody ever said like oil, huh? So no one ever said. I covered the BP oil spill, so I never knew that.
But to be fair, a lot of the oil is happening in Houston and the Louisiana, Mississippi coast. So everybody said oil.
Yeah, so I never thought about it. So when I got to NPR, I knew of NPR. Obviously, I knew that it was this incredible brand. I wasn't listening to it every day, and I've said this, I wasn't a huge listener to it. And so when I got on it, I didn't think like, oh, I need to sound a certain way. I wanted to sound good. I wanted to sound conversational. I wanted to make sure I was doing a good job, but I never thought about like, oh, my voice is different from the other voices on NPR, and so it will stand out. And so when people started pointing it out, I was very confused at first. Like, what did they mean? And then they would say some people would say they really like my voice, and I'm like, why? What is it? Like, what? I didn't know, but it really stood out. And even my friends or people will say, I remember the first time I heard you on there, I was like, oh my goodness. And this is so different. Like it stood out.
You have the language you've used at one point to talk about this is to say that your voice is expanding our understanding of what authority sounds like. So I had my students watch and listen to some of your work. And one of my students, Nick, keyed in on exactly that. And so he has a question that is connected to that notion of expansion of authority with your voice. Let's listen to Nick.
Hi, my name is Nick and I'm a senior at Wake Forest University. And my question is, with your voice helping to expand what people think of as authority, in this current moment, do you think it's important to expand what is thought of as authority in foreign policy issues?
Absolutely. I think that we need more voices, and I do try to bring on to Weekend Edition as I can a variety of voices. I'm particularly interested in Black women and foreign policy, and all sorts of foreign policy. I do think that part of, even with me, what people would be surprised about was they would, and I people have said this outright. I thought she would be talking about Black issues. I was surprised that she was talking about, what was happening in North Korea. And I'm surprised that she's talking about Iran and all these other issues. That's not what I expect to hear. And there are so many different voices, different, from people from marginalized groups, people, from different genders who are in the foreign policy sphere. And so that's something I, have tried to focus on, and I want to focus on more. There are times where I will just see like, oh, this is a person who has a very interesting thought or perspective on foreign policy, and I want to bring, them on air. And I have, that's the blessing of being a host. I could be like, I think this person is smart. I want to bring them on air. And they may not look like the exact person that you're expecting. And I think that is so important because there are so many people who are experts on these issues who are not viewed that way. And it's very easy to just get white males, especially when it comes to foreign policy and when it comes to economics. Oh my goodness. I had a whole list when I was on economics where I've always tried to look for women and, just a wide variety of voices, women, Black women, just a wide variety, because otherwise you can very easily end up just speaking to white men about economics. When I'm like, there's so many other people who are affected.
So I was teasing earlier, we actually were looking at these data around, and these data are now about 10 years old, but sort of across the 2010s and now into the 2020s, just again, it's part of it has to do with your point about sort of who sits in the host chair, but so much more of it has to do with who is considered an authority, who is called on, right, to have these conversations. And now I have another question from another student, James, and James has a question about media in a somewhat broader sense. I think you'll like this one.
Hi, my name is James, and I'm a student at Wake Forest. My question is, what are some ways you think that media literacy in the United States has gotten worse? What are some signs that it might be getting better? And is there anything in the world of political media coverage that you would like to see change? Thank you.
Well, that's a great question. I think, I think this is something that's thought about all the time, and I think it's so important. I think the way media literacy, has gotten worse is what people say is that with social media and with the internet, you can get online and find whatever you want, and it's news. It doesn't have to be verified. It doesn't have to be, it's just this person says this happened, and they could attribute it to CNN. CNN is saying this, and CNN hasn't said that. But it's just, but as long as if someone just gets on the internet and says it, then it's seen as fact. And so I think that's an issue with media literacy. I think there's also an idea about media that, that there is this, and I do think that some of this is rooted in things that are true, but I think there's this idea that there's some puppet master going, okay, on NPR today, this is what you're going to report on. And it's like, that's not really what's happening. Like there are blind spots that media has, and there are things that media doesn't understand. But it's not it's not necessarily intentional. It's more just like a lot of people doing the best they can, and they just put something out and whatever. Like there are all these things that I think people don't understand. I think that it's getting better in that. I think that a lot more groups are able to hold media to account and are able to say and to point out some of those blind spots that would not have been pointed out in the past. And I think that in that way, media literacy has gotten better, that people can point out like, well, why are you looking at things this way? why are you only talking to these people, or things like, well, why are you taking the police at their word at all times, and treating it as if it's gospel?
Yep.
Why are you taking politicians' word as if it's as if it's gospel?
Yep.
I think, being able to call out some of that, I think, is important, and I think that's a way that media literacy has improved. And I think you do see there is at least some concern in newsrooms about, that sort of feedback. And so you do see at times, it's not a perfect feedback loop, but you do see changes at times. Okay, maybe we didn't get this right. And you saw this a lot during the Trump administration,
Yep.
where media had to adjust what they were doing and the way they covered things.
Yep.
And that was, a lot of that was because of pushback from the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the gifts of the Trump administration is the hermeneutic of suspicion that you talked about earlier, like that just sort of typically as a Black girl, you were a little bit like, what? What? Are you sure? That like, side eye that is perhaps one of the gifts of living behind the veil as a Black woman, right, became more central so that like the White House says no longer, right, or the police report says, right, we get clearer about why that is one source of many. Now, I love that your point around, yes, you can talk that Black issues include North Korea and what's happening in the Mideast and all that. But sometimes you do just tell Black stories. And so there is one that I wanted to play for us. Now, this is an audio story. This is actually from way back in 2021. You were guest hosting on for Sam Sanders on the podcast, It's Been a Minute. So I just want to take, again, about 30 seconds to take a listen here.
So, story time. When I was little, I have some pretty vivid memories of being in the kitchen with my head in the sink, getting my hair washed, water rushing down over my head and my ears and my eyes. I felt like I was drowning. And let's not even talk about that hot comb that came after the hair wash. The less said about that, the better.
Look at all those hairstyles.
Oh, I know. I was like, I feel like I should tell anybody who's watching, like, we put together the visuals that went with that audio because little baby Ayesha's face was my favorite thing. Oh my goodness. But having done a few hair stories, I am so fascinated. Why do you think our hair still keeps giving so many stories to tell?
It's because I think that it has so many stories to tell because they say hair can carry your emotions and your pain and I think it's true because I think and I'm sure it's for everybody, but definitely for Black women, there is so much in that hair. Everything. And how we wear it, how we won't wear it, but there's so much pressure and how it has to look from moment to moment to and there's just so much and whether you were getting it relaxed back in the day or even with natural hair now, oh my goodness, I mean everyone is having those conversations. I've even when you hear about relaxers and now you have the FDA saying they're probably dangerous. I mean, I was around some very high ranking Black women in the Biden administration who were like, look, I gotta relax my hair. Look, I mean,
there's a lot of things that might kill me, and I got to keep my hair right.
It's just like it's a pressure. It's like I'm not changing. I mean, these are the conversations that we have, and I think that's why there's so many stories about it, and now movies and shows about it because it's a part of who we are. It's also obviously been a part of the way we've been discriminated against. That's one part of the story. And I think with that story, I really wanted to tap into the joy of Black hair and like the fun of it and the way I can go from long to, my braids here to what, to my little fro, whatever. I can just go all, whatever I want to be for the day. I just go and get it done. And that's what I am. So.
Look, my favorite Black girl hair story in the context of politics is that when Angela Davis was on the run, all she had to do, she just straightened the fro out and walked directly past the police. could not see her. And it's like the idea that as long as they couldn't see she became invisible by just straightening I mean, that is, if that don't tell you everything you need to know about our hair.
Well, they probably didn't even know froze could do that. They have no idea,
Right,
because
exactly.
they have no idea how that works. It's like it's a mystery.
Okay, before we go, you have a book that is coming out, and I love this book. I sat and read it because this is the best part about doing anything in the context of media is all the free books. It is available for pre-order. It'll be out in January. It is called HBCU Made. You are the editor and you wrote this really lovely introduction. Talk to me about this book.
Oh, this is, I like to call HBCU Made. I've got it here too, of course. My I like to call it my fourth child. But it has been a labor of love, and it is what I want it to be, and what I believe it is a testament to the power of these institutions to help and shape and mold leaders. They molded the leaders of yesterday, the leaders of today and tomorrow, and that they have, by providing a safe haven for Black students to be themselves, to grow and to develop, that they have allowed people to stand in their power and to discover who they are and the way that they can better the world. And the world is better for it. The world is better because of HBCUs. And so that is what I think each of these essays from all of these range of people, whether it's Oprah Winfrey or Roy Wood Jr. or Stacey Abrams, Branford Marsalis, is that these are stories about how, being in these institutions, which are not perfect, but that they have provided a place that, they've provided very fertile ground in which people have been allowed to grow and flourish.
So, I start out reading it, and your introduction is so lovely. It's so rooted in the North Carolina experience. I love that you actually you turn Jesus on your mama in order to be able to go. Like, I'm not gonna give it away, but y'all got to read it because it's a lovely cozy moment that happens there.
Yeah.
But I'm the youngest of 5 children. All my Black siblings all went to HBCUs, and in fact, the oldest 2 to Howard. So, I mean, ever since the vice president, I mean, I don't even know why y'all are like this, like all the time. Like y'all are just
We're just insufferable. We're insufferable.
yeah, you really are. You just it's just enough already. But for all the big people you have, the Oprahs, the Stacey Abrams, I have to say my eyes went immediately to my beloved Michael Arceneaux, and I'm just claiming Michael, even though he's everybody's beloved because everybody loves Cynic. And Michael Arceneaux's piece is about being queer at Howard, and being queer at Howard at the time that he was queer at Howard, and feeling like if I come out, I might, and the whole way he gets to Howard, right, is Recruiter Bay, who he talks about, right, who comes to recruit him in Houston. But I thought that was important that you, as much as it's a celebration, you also do in this book platform folks like Michael and others who also have a story to tell that isn't all joyous and good.
Yeah, and that was really important to me because, I think that's the journalist in me, that I don't want this to be PR, right? I want it to be rich and full of context and nuance. And what I wanted it to be was a love letter, but love is complicated. And love, also requires asking more of these institutions. Love is not just, whatever. It's I love you enough to ask you to do better. And so I loved Michael's essay because I felt like he spoke so clearly and beautifully about being a gay man on campus and not being able to fully be himself, because there are Black people that are gay. There are Black people that are trans. There are Black people, this is a part of being Black. And so if you're going to celebrate, Blackness, then he's saying celebrate all of it. and that these institutions need to do a better job of that. And so I wanted to make sure we were able to give people a voice, and to tell that story as well.
All right, I've just got a couple quick, what I'll call lightning round questions before we head out, some speed rounds. This one comes from one of our viewers who asks, how do you deal with intentional bias and maybe even willful ignorance in the production process? So especially if it's, and I suspect, given who this is coming from, and I know they've been working on covering what's happening in Israel and Gaza, like how do you think about, especially in your seat as a host, which gives you some editorial power but not total editorial authority, right? How do you address these big questions? What's the process?
I mean, I think that I try to make sure that when I'm dealing with things like this, that I am coming with evidence-based, and that I make sure that if I'm bringing questions that I'm able to back up what I'm saying. I also do believe in picking, my battles and saying, okay, I'm going to raise it this time. Maybe I'll let it go. But if it happens again, then I'm going to, put that in my arsenal. And I'm going to say, look, these are things that are really important. I don't want this to happen. And you're not always going to have that power. So I try to look at it as sometimes you can just raise your voice and do what you can do, because you're not always going to be in a position. And I have not always been in positions where where what I said would necessarily change the outcome. And so sometimes all you can do is say it. Sometimes you might just have to write it in your group chat, because you got to collect, you got to work, you got to get a job, and you may not be able to change the entire institution. And so you got to decide what you have to do. But I think you do the best with what you can. You say what you can when you can. And when you have more power, then you say more. When you have more influence, then you stand up more. And I think that's what you have to do at times. And I think that is what is required. But it's a tough road.
Yep. The group chat is out here saving Black lives. All of us know we all got a little group chat in the corner that we have to sometimes go to. All right. Also on a relatively swift one here. In the book, you write that Shawnee Hilton told you on the way out to put some bass in your ontological voice, not in your actual voice, but put some bass in your ontological voice, sort of to stand in yourself a bit more. So I'm wondering if you could now give yourself advice, your 10-year self, or maybe even 20 years ago self, what would be the sentence you give yourself?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the sentence that I would give myself is probably it's very simple, but I would probably just tell myself that you are more than enough. And I think that's something that I have, I didn't know then. Sometimes I still don't know now. And sometimes I think that and then, I would also say, give yourself a break, girl. You too hard on yourself. Stop. You're mean to yourself. You're nice to other people, but you're mean to yourself. You're nasty to yourself. Stop. So I think there's two sentences, but that's what I would tell her. It's like, you are more than enough. And stop, and give yourself a break. You're doing good work. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are. That's what I would tell myself. If I could talk to baby Ayesha.
I love that. And baby Ayesha was so cute. The holiday is coming up. Your mom was in an Uber. The holiday is coming up. What one dish has to be on your table for it to feel like the holiday for you?
Stuffing. I need stuffing. I need stuffing with the turkey. That's my thing. So I'm very big stuffing, gravy, and turkey. That's my.
What's in your stuffing? Is it like a sweet or a savory?
It's savory. I think it's more savory. I like the savory with the gravy. Now, look, I'm not cooking this. I don't like to cook. So I'm not cooking it. I'm eating it. I'm showing up. I'm not doing that. But that's what I require.
Woo!
I
All
can't
right.
cook. I grew up in the South, so I can't cook. But I don't like to do it.
But
So
they're not doing it. I got you. I got you. All right. One more political and then one more light, and then we're out of here. Do you have a prediction for the GOP primary winner?
I think it will. And look, and I will be very clear that predictions are, a fool's errand. And
Yep.
so, I think, so you never know what could happen. But I think it will be, I think it will be Trump unless something happens. Like, I don't think that anyone has made any real push for it to not be Trump. Honestly, I don't think anyone else has really put up a fight. They boxed each other. I don't think they've really gone for him, and the nomination is through him, and nobody has even, to me, made a real attempt to go through him. I mean, Chris Christie, but he doesn't have the base of the party. So I think it would be Trump.
Cake or pie?
Cheesecake is the only cake I would.
I love it. You're getting a lot of love from the students behind that one. The students are all back here behind me, and there's a fair bit of love for the cheesecake answer, Ayesha Rascoe. Ayesha, thank you so much for taking so much time with us. Go feed your babies. I know they want more than chips. We're in the evening time now. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your voice. And just really thank you for being here and taking the time to talk with our class and with any folks who are tuning into our digital version. And remember, everybody, HBCU Made, a celebration of the Black college experience, edited and introduction by Ayesha Rascoe, is available for pre-order. And remember, pre-orders matter to whether or not it ends up being a bestseller. So go ahead and pre-order your books.
Yeah.
Everybody who was part of presenting this, thanks again to the Ms. Foundation for their support. None of it is possible without the Ms. Foundation. Also, thanks to all the campus partners at Wake Forest University, which is not an HBCU, but nonetheless, thanks so much to our partners in the Department of Politics and International Affairs, Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, African American Studies, the Women's Center, and the Program for Character and Leadership. I'm Melissa Harris Perry. This has been a Sister Citizens Talk, and the next one is with Joy Reid in 2 weeks on December 7th, and that'll be our last one of the series. All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
Wherever I go and whatever I do, I am a Black woman. There are certain things I say where people will know that I'm Black. Some people will say, oh, you've kind of turned up your Blackness. But it's not like I'm turning it up or turning it down. I'm just talking more casually. Whatever I do, I'm myself, because that's the only person I know how to be. But sometimes you may feel it a little more depending on what I'm talking about.